yourselves POG. But I want all of you to call me Fatso right now on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Now, do you think you're being kind? Or are you being horrible, mean, evil people? What do you think? How many of you think you're being horrible people calling me Fatso? Okay. And how many of you think you're being very kind calling me Fatso? See, just 4 people. Just 4 people think, I asked for it, yeah. But only 4 of you think you're being kind calling me Fatso, and the rest of you think you're being absolutely horrible calling me Fatso. Now, the problem with that is, when you massage my ego and tell me, it's perfectly fine, Abby, you're lovely as you are, you're just horizontally expansive to suit your intellectual expanse, you're a person of girth. Tomorrow, when I get a heart attack because of all that cholesterol that this lady fed me lunch for, way too much meat and fat, it ain't gonna be kind. You're probably better off just calling me Fatso, Fatso, Fatso and fat shaming me right now. You'd be doing me a favor because I live longer. I live longer, I certainly won't be having any open heart, what do they call it, stent. Yeah, that thing, yeah. Okay, sorry, I'm not very good at, I'm a humanities student, I'm the dumb kid. Yeah, okay. So, what ends up happening now is, we have a very similar concept when we're doing policy. It's called first order effects, second order effects, and third order effects. I am going to come and slap you, and then what happens? If I'm bigger than you, second order effect is nothing will happen. Third order effect is the person I slapped will go crying to mommy. Mommy will call police, and then Abby will end up in jail. That's third order effect. Are you thinking things through? The other option could be, if you're stronger than me, second order effect is I get punched in my nose. Now the question when you look at kindness as a concept is, how far back, how far down the chain, and how many variables are you willing to consider? And so my topic today, virtue signaling through history, is actually another word for, another phrase really for, no good deed goes unpunished. And I'm going to give you a few examples from history about why no good deed goes unpunished. Now, how many of you have heard of a place called Brandenburg? You all know Berlin, yeah? Brandenburg Gate. Yeah? Okay. There's something called the miracle of the House of Brandenburg. And there was this really lovely Russian empress who decided she didn't really like the German emperor. The German emperor was called Frederick the Great. He fancied himself a great military genius. He sucked, anyway. But he fancied himself really good. And he was called the Great because he, the Hindi word for it I think is chaploosi. Chaploosi ko Tamil mein kya kehte hain? Anyway, yeah, I mean, you get it. Flatterers. And he used to give a lot of commissions and money to Rousseau and Voltaire and all these people. Jalradi karde, that's it, jalradi karde. And so he used to say, oh, Your Majesty, you're so great. The sun doesn't shine out of the east, it actually shines out when you speak your first words in the morning, etc., etc., etc. And so he came to be known as the Great. Anyway, so he decides he's a great military genius, attacks Russia. Russia doesn't take it very kindly, and the Empress of Russia basically, in about a year's time, has Berlin surrounded. He's hiding, he's going to be killed in an hour or so. You all see the siege of Berlin in 1945. People don't realize the Russians did it 200-300 years before that as well. Anyway, so this guy is hiding. And then happens, and his dynasty is called the Brandenburg, the Prussian dynasty. That day, the Empress dies. And her son, Paul, takes over. Now, Paul loves Voltaire and Rousseau. He's completely inspired by all these Renaissance ideals. He believes, Frederick the Great is this guy who's such a democrat. He talks to his people, he listens to his people. He never did. In fact, Frederick the Great came up with two great sayings. I talk Italian to women, French to my court, and German to my horses. And the second saying he came up with was, I've reached a deal with my people. They say what they like, I do what I like. Not really enlightened, but anyway, I guess it counted as enlightened in those days. Anyway, now this new Tsar, Paul, he's so enamored with Frederick because he's read all the propaganda. He says, the war ends here. You're my hero. I'm going to give back everything that Russia has taken from you in the last 1 year. And what's worse, he joined up with Frederick against his own former allies and attacks Denmark. Now, you'd think this was an act of kindness to his hero, right? Guess how he got paid for it? Killed, exactly. His wife was Catherine the Great. 6 months down the line, she was so fed up with him, she had him killed. Good deed, punished. Let's come a little, closer to our own time in history. You've all heard of Marie Antoinette, right? The lovely Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake. How many of you actually know let them eat cake was actually her being kind? Did you know that? None of you know that. First, she didn't say cake, she said brioche. Now, brioche is a kind of bread which is laden with lots of butter. And generally the thing was, I'm not going to get into the etiquette at Versailles, that I'd need another 40 minutes of your time just to show you how wine had to be drunk. You never placed your wine glass on the table. There would be a waiter sitting over your right shoulder, standing over your right shoulder. You only had one sip and kept it back there. You never kept it here. I'll do a whole session on that later if my ever wants me to. I don't think she will. Now, there was no bread to polish off the sauce, and the second option was brioche. Nobody actually ate brioche. So even though brioche was a more expensive bread because it had all the butter, when somebody came and told Marie Antoinette, ma'am, they're rioting because there is no bread, she's like, oh, but the poor things, let them eat brioche then. I mean, it's the leftovers. And obviously, it turned everybody against her, poor lady. She was actually a good girl. That's your second case of kindness going on. Well, punished very badly. The third was this lovely man called Tsar Alexander. I'll keep coming back to Russia and France because for whatever reason, they're more fun. These tin pot little dictatorships are always much more fun than, Anglo-Saxon democracies and all that. Dictators have character, man. They're not characterless like, democracies and things like that. So anyway, Tsar Alexander, lovely guy. He, again, you see this repeat thing, being inspired by the ideals of enlightenment. He decides one fine day, he wakes up and he decides he's going to abolish serfdom in Russia. Now, serfdom wasn't slavery, it was something very close to slavery, where the peasant was bound to the land, had to till the land, couldn't really move anywhere without the permission of the legal guy. Now, you'd reckon when you abolish serfdom, it's a lovely thing to do, right? Except the economy wasn't suited for it. Russia was an agrarian economy. The economy collapsed. And out of that economic collapse, one of the guys affected is a lovely gentleman called Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, also known as Lenin, who then has this gentleman's family executed a few 30-40 years down the line. Again, nothing goes unpunished. And this is why we keep looking in policy. Kindness is not an esoteric concept. In policy, we call it research. It's researching the deep second, third, and fourth order effects of what you decide to do. You've all heard the term kindness kills, and I'm just going to keep giving you examples of how kindness kills. I know it's not what you expect at a kindness festival, but when you have a guy like me who does nuclear shit, I literally calculate how many people are going to die if you drop a nuke on a city. So this is what you're going to get. The next thing that happens, again with the Tsar, is Tsar Romanov, who finally that lovely man called Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov decides to have shot, along with the rest of his family, is being crowned the Tsar. For the first time, he wants everybody to come to his coronation. He wants the people of Russia to gather. Everybody needs to be there. Everybody should get free food, free wine. Well, not wine. They have a thing called kvass. It's kind of like a bread beer. So everybody should get free kvass, free chicken, free whatever. There's a massive party thrown. Every noble is required to throw free food parties across Moscow. Everybody hears about it. They gather. Of course, nobody had bothered to ever realize that lots of people would gather. It becomes a stampede. On the day of his coronation, about 2,000-3,000 people die in those stampedes. And he is forever remembered as the bloody Tsar after that. And so there is zero respect for him. The problem is, when he hears about it, there is meant to be a ball in his honor at the French embassy. Now, what does he do? Like, in this day and age, you'd think if this happened, say, to a prime minister or something, they would cancel attending that. You can't. Why? Because he's just signed an alliance against Germany, or they're in the process of finalizing an alliance against Germany with the French. So he can't say no. And he decides to go for this ball. And he's further labeled, after not just being bloody Nicholas, he also gets named tone-deaf Nicholas, which just adds to the fact that he doesn't care about us. So you see, kindness, even looking after people, not thinking through the consequences. What is kindness? I mean, if I'm being kind to you, if I'm virtue signaling to you, how many other people am I alienating out there? Do you calculate that sometimes? Let me just come to modern times now, because I want to give my act of kindness to you is I'm going to make you all leave with a bit of a guilt complex out here. Okay? So, I've got another, I'm just going to take another 5 minutes anyway. You all heard of the Titanic, right? Yeah, okay. Do you know how many people died because of the Titanic? Not on the Titanic, but because of the Titanic. About another 1,500 people. You know why? Because once the Titanic went down, as you would have all seen in that purveyor of all heavenly truths, Hollywood, how many of you seen that movie? You can tell I look like that movie too. Anyway, so what happens is they decide Titanic did not have enough lifeboats. Therefore, everybody must have lifeboats. Now, a ship is actually a very careful piece of maritime engineering. There are weights and balances involved in it. You can't make something very top-heavy. And when they mandate that every boat, every big steamer needs to have so many lifeboats on top, the added weight on top leads to the sinking of at least 2 other ocean liners, the biggest of which is something called the Islandia, which sinks with 800 people on board. But you'll never hear about that. Why? Because they want you to hear about Titanic, it's so romantic, but not Islandia, which sank precisely because of safety measures put in. Then, now here's where I transfer the guilt complex onto you, right? Not then. How many of you drive SUVs? I want to know. Creta, Honda, CRV, BRV, drive a BRV, okay? Okay, yes, everybody, see the hands start going up, all the hands start going up. Come along, yes, everybody drives SUVs. Do you know how SUVs got popular? So in 1973, in response to Israel's victory in a certain war, the Arab states imposed an oil embargo. And the price of oil went up so high that America had to mandate all kinds of legislation to make cars more fuel efficient. Alright, and that is when Japanese cars took off, because Japanese cars were already fuel efficient, Whereas American cars built in Detroit were known as gas guzzlers. They used to be this huge Cadillac and Oldsmobile and Buick, and they used to have this Batman style, like those gills of the fish and scorpion fish gills and whatnot here and there. And they used to be like a liter to the kilometer kind of thing. Anyway. Now, so they introduced all this legislation where cars need to be extremely fuel efficient. But guess what they leave out? Trucks. So what do auto manufacturers in America do? They start putting car chassis, car bodies on truck chassis and start selling them. The pickup truck then becomes an SUV because it is exempt from fuel efficiency legislation. And America ends up gas guzzling just as much as it would inside. So remember, if you're driving SUVs today, all you gas guzzlers, you're killing the planet. Please remember that. Your kindness is killing the planet. Killers, 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 all of you. You're all the same as me. And finally, have any of you been to the Bharatpur Bird Sanctuary? You have. Has anybody else? Okay, there. Anybody else been to Bharatpur? There. Okay. How many of you know that Bharatpur was almost destroyed by an act of kindness? Probably India's premier bird sanctuary. In sometime in the early 80s, all these environmentalists, they got together and they said, look at this beautiful bird sanctuary. It's being used as grazing grounds by all the Gujars and the native nomads. They bring their bulls and their cows and whatnot in there, and it's destroying the ecosystem. Now, Mrs. Gandhi was a very committed environmentalist, so she banned all the cows and everything going in there. The next year, the birds dropped by half. The following year, half again. And Bharatpur was nearly destroyed. And then when they did studies, they realized that the birds were coming there precisely because of those nomads, precisely because of those bulls and cows coming in there, precisely because they were cleaning out the lower, all the weeds and things like that, allowing regrowth, eating all those weeds, the dung out there, all kinds of insects would grow which the birds would feed on, and that is why they came there. So something that was a great act of ecocide was actually brought on by environmentalists trying to do a good thing. And that is why I say, kindness kills. Think through your action. Kindness to one person or one set of people, be extremely unkind to other people, including the dung beetle that the birds at Bharatpur need to feed on. So the next time you do anything, please think of the dung beetle. Don't sacrifice the dung beetle to keep a human. Love you. And remember, you're all killers.